Yeah, I worked with them producing their first album. They're like family to me. I was really close with their dad, Denroy. I met Denroy because I was selling herb. Someone introduced me to Denroy, and Denroy had a pop crossover dance reggae track called "I'll Do Anything for You," which you probably know about. When Denroy had that hit, he bought this big kind of dilapidated house in Bushwick. And at that time, Bushwick was like a very dangerous, crime-ridden neighborhood. And he bought this big house, had a garage in the back, and he had like speakeasies where people would come and buy nickel bags of herb. And Denroy had 27 kids. So in a typical story, Jamaicans migrating to the US or UK, Denroy had moved to New York. And then he had this hit. I had moved to New York after the Peter Tosh, after working with Peter on the Legalize It album, and was interested to resume uh, my visual art career. And my good friends from college, two sets of brothers, had become the biggest herb smugglers in the country. They were smuggling 40,000 pounds at a time from Thailand. I rented a loft in Lower Manhattan to start making these paintings. And I was very ambitious. I wanted to make big paintings, and it was going to be expensive and the rent. And even though I was kind of out of touch with them physically, we'd been like following each other's careers. And a van would show up at my place, and it'd be like 10 or 12 boxes, cardboard boxes. And inside there'd be in seal plastic, like 10 to 15-pound bales of Thai herb, which was like the best herb you could get at that time. And they dropped the boxes. A driver who I didn't know, they would show up, drop off the boxes. They were smuggling into the Oregon coast. So there'd be a tanker, or sometimes a tanker, sometimes a big fishing trawler. And then they have some small boats that come out to start taking it. And they had some stash houses. It's 40,000 pounds. So they get distributed like cars and trucks and around the country. Denroy would send his two oldest kids that could drive over to my place, and they'd pick up a couple of boxes. And then they'd start to bring me basically $5 bills. We're talking like millions and millions of dollars. So they couldn't accept $5 bills. So the hardest part of the job for me was changing the $5 bills, because you didn't want to take it to the bank, because what are you doing with all these $5 bills? Fortunately for me, my mom was managing a club called Danceteria. My mother could take the $5 bills because she had all this. So she would take the money to the bank in the morning anyway, so she could change out the money for me. So one time, I'm counting the money, and I find this $5 bill, and something's wrong. Someone had made a counterfeit. What they did was they took four $5 bills and they cut one corner off each of the fives. So it's just missing one corner so you can still use it. as a 5. And they scotch taped the 4 corners to the $1 bill and bought a nickel bag. I had become friends. I don't know. I made this book. Maybe you saw it. Came out like 2 years ago, of work I did with the painter, Jean-Michel Basquiat. Yeah, so there's a little bit of the story of the $5 bill. So when I showed it to Jean, he said, "Oh, I'm going to the factory. I'm painting with Andy. I'll get him to sign it and we can photograph it and blow it up." Anyway, flash forward. I started to have some success with my painting, having shows like New York and LA and in Europe, culminating in a 10-year survey show that traveled, started at the Museum of Modern Art in Stockholm. It went to Amsterdam, it went to the UK, and then it went to the museum in Dublin. That was 92, 93. So right around that time, I got offered a production deal with MCA Records to make Jamaican records. And I was really excited about it. And they were going to pay me really well and give me good budgets. So I suggested that the first thing we do is make a live album of Sunsplash. So I rented a truck, state-of-the-art truck in Miami, brought it down to Montego Bay, and all the MCA executives were going to fly down for the first night of the festival on the corporate jet. So almost setting up. The night before the first night, I see Denroy. I hadn't seen Denroy in like 7, 8 years. I see Denroy, and Denroy says, "Oh, my kids, they're playing at this party on the beach tonight." They weren't on the festival. Nobody knew who they were. So I went with Denroy to the party, and it was Morgan Heritage, and they had another act, the kids, called the Dreads. And I was just like, oh my God, this is like the best. This is like Sly and the Family Stone. This was like so exciting. So I arranged with the Sunsplash promoters to give them the stage before the festival would start. The night of the festival, so the festival was starting at 7 o'clock. I got them the stage at 6 and invited all the MCA execs, and they signed them on the spot. $250,000. And they went from like total obscurity to having a 30-year career. It was from this $5 bill. So they're like family. They call me uncle. One of the best things I've done in my life. Help them make that first record.